Once again, we welcome back to the National Newspaper Publishers Virtual Convention, our panel on millennials and the Black press. We thank Jeff Boney, distinguished journalist, award-winning journalist from the Houston Forward Times, Lafayette Barnes, associate publisher of the Washington Informer and editor and publisher of The Bridge, Micha Green, who is a distinguished editor of the Washington Afro, and Franklin Chavis, who actually developed and founded Black Millennial Voices. So Jeff, you can take it away. We can pick up from where we began our discussion on the day before.
Well, first of all, again, thank you so much, Dr. Chavis, for your leadership and for helping put together this outstanding panel of young millennials that can help us talk about some of the key issues of our day. All right, so, moving forward, I just want to make sure that we reiterate that, this is very important during these current times to talk through some of the key issues going on there. As we talked about before, a couple of pandemics that are going on in this country, both internally and externally, that are impacting us. One of those, of course, is COVID-19, unprecedented virus. The other, of course, is police brutality and racism in this country. And of course, as Lafayette Barnes has spoken before, you had internal issues that were impacting the African American community that we bring upon ourselves. And so I wanted to kind of bring everyone back in and continue the discussion about being a millennial during these pressing and trying times. So I'll start with you, Micha, as we start this morning. From your perspective, what do you recommend to the Black press of America to enhance and increase engagement of millennials to ensure the future sustainability of the Black press?
Thank you so much, Jeff, for that question. I think that in order to engage the millennials, in order to just ensure that they know the Black press exists, we have to be champions of it. At this juncture, working for the Afro, everybody who runs into me knows I work for the Afro. And I remind them that the Afro is around, that we've been around for 128 years, that we're digital, that we're on all of the social media platforms. And thus, being a champion of the Black press. Where we are right now, we're in a really great place because millennials want to support Black businesses, and they want their sources of information and news to come from reputable African-American sources. So we're at a really, really wonderful time to be able to capture not only the millennial generation, but the generations under that, as well as those who may have forgotten that in the baby boomer generation and even before, that, hey, the Black press is still around. And can be your source and should be, your source of information during this time. I think that it's also important to, particularly for the millennial generation, to push the fact that the information that the Black press is disseminating is far different than what you're going to get on mainstream media, and knowing and allowing that their voices to be heard as well. One thing that I learned in working for the Afro is that the way that people got to know about the Afro back in the day, 128 years ago, was because their stories were in the paper. So again, having millennial voices, having contributions and op-eds from millennials, getting them on our digital shows, getting them to share our digital content, and producing information that is critical to them.
Lafayette.
I think there are a few things that the Black press can focus on to increase engagement of millennials. First is just, a digital first method, a digital first approach to business and presenting information, and not even just digital, meaning desktop and mobile, but even like focusing primarily on mobile. So like when I look at our data, when I look at our analytics of where people are reading our paper, we get most of our engagement on mobile. And we get most of our referrals from mobile. So anyone that goes to our website is getting the article from some sort of source on their phone. So certainly, you know, having a mobile facing, digital facing platform for all of our publishers, for all of our publications would be extremely helpful. I think also we need to engage with our non-traditional media sources. There are like so many young people creating, you know, a YouTube channel or starting their own magazine or a blog. And I just don't think they're just like Franklin said, I don't think they're being included in the conversation of what the Black press is. I think we need to sort of like reach down, reach out, and sort of do a call for, you know, what is the Black press now? I think it's been sort of a like a private society to a certain degree. It's very sort of, you know, kept in the halls of the museum or whatnot, you know, and it should be, you know, out in the street and people should be able to access it very easily. And then just what everybody else is saying, just connecting within each other, championing our brands, and including millennials in our content, super important. That's really mostly what I'm thinking about first.
You know, it's interesting. I've been seeing signs during the protests that have taken place, particularly that after George Floyd, and some of those signs. One of the signs that has stood out to me, and some of the things that I've heard some millennials say is, "We are not our ancestors." I don't know if you've seen those signs or heard those statements. For some people, that has come across as a rallying cry, and for others, it has come across, especially those that have come before us, as offensive. You know, during these times, what does that actually mean to you? And what is your view of the Black Lives Matter movement today in America and throughout the world?
So I think when someone says we are not our ancestors, I think they're more referring to, you know, that is a new day and age for humans in general. So, you know, it's not necessarily that Blacks are not like their Black ancestors, just we as a people are not like our previous ancestors. We have technology, we have, you know, we've been given certain, we've been exposed to a certain lifestyle. We can see everything that's happening in the world and we can choose our own ending, you know? And so, you know, we don't have to accept, you know, what is, you know, what has been presented to us. And so I think that, you know, maybe, I'm not sure, but, you know, obviously I'm only part of this generation, but I would imagine in previous, you know, you know, generations, there might've been a little bit more, you know, they didn't have the internet. So it's like, you couldn't just check in and you couldn't just, you know, we see like a lot of the, you know, promotion of the civil unrest is because of us having access to digital media platforms and being able to, you know, immediately, you know, out someone if you know, these Karens or comrades or whoever, you know what I'm saying? Us being able to say, you know, hey, look, this is this person's picture right here, you know, and then by the end of the day, everybody knows where they work and where they, you know, their address, and they've been fired, and, you know, the company has addressed, you know, their systemic racism within the company. Like we can make changes very quickly. So I think it's sort of like a call to anyone that thinks that they can, you know, live in the same, you know, scare us or try to live in the same realm, you know, as they expected us to live before. It's not necessarily, you know, intended disrespect. It's just saying that, you know, we have new technologies now. We have, you know, access to new things, and you know, we'll handle certain situations differently, you know, with those tools, you know. As far as Black Lives Matter, I really think that they're doing a great job of applying pressure and, you know, bringing attention to the plight, you know, of police brutality and many of the issues that Black Americans have. And I think that, you know, we all should look at them as an example of ways that we can, you know, motivate ourselves to get involved in making change for our community. You know, I don't expect Black Lives Matter to be the end all be all of our issues. I really think that the issues start within us. So, you know, it's something that, you know, we just need, I think as a people, if we can reflect and look within ourselves and try to correct our individual selves, like we as a people can come together, and Black Lives Matter can really, you know, not just be an organization, but a true, you know, a true way of life.
All right, Micha.
So this is an interesting question, and thank you for it. I do believe and agree with Lafayette that the term or the phrase "we are not our ancestors" is not meant with malintent. I do think, again, piggybacking off of his comment, that we come from we're a different generation, and we have different tools that allow us not to be our ancestors. However, I can totally see why it's offensive. I've talked to a lot of people from other generations who have said that we need to get back to Sankofa. We need to understand where we've been in order to know where we're going. And my only sort of pushback on that is that we know, the millennials know, and that's why they're saying we are not our ancestors. However, you know, again, I think we're in a current generation of what we call call out culture, right? And we have this call out culture through social media. And so, you know, while the Sankofa principles are totally in play, I think, with this current revolution, and knowing where we've been, and honoring those leaders who were in the forefront in the 60s, and those leaders who were in the forefront put as abolitionists and things like that. But as Lafayette said, now we're in a place where we can call people out, and we can call them out on so many different levels, whether it's through social media, whether it's on the front lines. I was, prior to getting on this call, I was looking at a video here in Washington, D.C., where a guy was getting arrested yesterday evening for recording the police officers, right? Calling them out. That was his form of activism. And that just can't, our ancestors didn't have that ability, right? They didn't have the ability to hold a cell phone in their hands and show some of the atrocities that was happening when they were out protesting. So, you know, while the phrase comes off as pretty cocky and sort of is exactly what people critique millennials about, it does come from a place of like, we are really the next level. Not only are we not our ancestors who fought, but now we're taking it to the next level. That said, Black Lives Matter has been, I think, critical in this call out culture. They were calling out people, you know, in 2014 and in 2012, when that wasn't as popular. And they were calling out politicians. They were calling out local leaders who they thought weren't doing everything they could be, as well as the Karens and the Beckys and the Chads of the world. And so right now, not only are they calling people out, but obviously action is key for them. And I love that they're applying pressure. I love that Black Lives Matter is ensuring that their demands are heard, even if not met. That said, because Black Lives Matter is also just a chant and a movement, as much as it is an organization, if not more, this chant and movement, I do encourage people to look at the Black Lives Matter website, the actual organization's website, so you know what the demands are, so you know what that organization is fighting for. Here in Washington, D.C., there are so many different organizations that are on the front lines, but everybody's yelling Black Lives Matter, which I think is great because Black lives do matter. But I do encourage people to look at the actual Black Lives Matter website, not the national one, as well as within your local jurisdictions, to see what are the demands, because they change from place to place and state to state. And I think it really can help put into perspective some of the concerns overall that millennials are currently calling out.
So keeping in that same line of conversation, and thank you all so much for your insightful comments. You know, the Black press, of which you all are involved, the Black press of America, whatever the outlet is, whatever the method that you're delivering your content, is extremely important during this day and time. Keeping with that same line of thinking, though, with we are not our ancestors and what that means, Of course, when it comes to Black press, there's a different mindset view as to how content should be received and or delivered to this generation and to the entire society as a whole. How do you view the Black press of America today with your involvement as our ancestors? You mentioned, Micha, about how old the Afro is. And of course, we know how old the Washington Informer is and how old the NNPA is as a whole since it was founded. So what's the difference with your involvement as you see it today versus the ancestors? I'll start with you, Micha.
I want to first start by saying that one of the things that I love about the Afro is that I'm constantly reminded that we have been around for 128 years. And so while we are totally different and we're in a different place than we were 128 years ago, that is always something that stays in the back of my head, to consider that a former slave had the audacity to create a publication for his community. The fact that a former slave had the audacity to do that when so many people could not read, I think is just, mind-blowing and humbling. And as a 28-year-old, really moving and also a charge that I have a responsibility to keep that same legacy going, because I had a totally different experience. I went to Fordham University and University of Maryland to major and to get a master's in journalism. Totally different from what these people experienced 128 years ago. And so it's my responsibility to keep up that legacy. That said, I'm really thankful for the Afro and in PA for embracing new styles of disseminating information. Really, holding on to the fact that we need to be voices of our community and tell our community stories and giving them that platform, but in a different way. Tapping into some of those people who are already telling stories in their communities, whether they're bloggers and YouTubers, and saying, hey, now let's get you in the Afro. That same piece you did, let's turn that into an op-ed. And let's post that digitally online, embedded in your story. And going back to what Lafayette said, thinking digitally first, not, for a long time, I think we've allowed our paper to drive our website. And I'm not talking about the Afro, I'm talking about the Black press in general. And we just can't do that. We cannot do that. Knowing that the digital is first and foremost and what most people are getting their information for, letting that digital drive the paper. And again, going back to sort of that community journalist format, when I first heard about that was terrifying. Again, as somebody with a master's in journalism, I'm like, no, only people who know what they are doing need to be telling these stories. But that is not why the Black press existed in the first place. And it is so refreshing to now be able to tap somebody who's out on the front lines, protesting and saying, hey, can you get me a 500-word piece, or can you take some photos and send them to me, and we include that onto our social media and then put it into the paper. And so going back to sort of the roots of the Black press, but then using it in a different way and using it in a way that is beneficial to us in 2020 and beyond.
Okay, Lafayette.
If I could add anything, I would just say that recently I've started adding a quote to our, not necessarily a quote, but a statement to some of our marketing materials that says, control the narrative, save the city. And so I believe that the Black press is how we control our narrative and not only change our city, but change our reality, change our world, whatever, make the world how we want it to be. So, without having any control of our narrative, without having a Black press, who knows where we would be. So I certainly think the Black press is super important today, as it has always been. We still have a lot of the same issues. I mean, yesterday I was in our archive looking through some of the older papers, and they're literally some of the same headlines. It's like black child killed by police, or just companies apologizing for racism, whatever that may be. These are things that are still happening. We have repeat headlines. So I think we're literally still the same black press. I mean, we're just a younger, we're trying to figure it out. I don't know. I wish that in the black press it was a little bit more like mentorship, because I think that, we have a lot to learn. There's a gap. And then also we have this to learn new technology and new ways of the, like, sort of what they call the new media. So there is like a hump, that we're trying to, as younger folks, trying to figure out how we get over that hump to, be as successful as our predecessors. But I think as we figure those things out, like we'll see the black press start to have a lot more impact than maybe we've seen in the recent past.
As I think about the Black Lives Matter movement that's being led by a lot of millennials and younger people, I couldn't help but think about the Double V campaign. If you're familiar with the Double V campaign, it was an initiative that was actually led by the Pittsburgh Courier newspaper, which was a member of the NNPA. And it was focused on two objectives. One was, of course, victory in the war abroad, which was World War II. The other was victory against discrimination back here at home. You had Black people that would go fight in these wars, or this war particularly, and then come back home and be treated like second-class citizens or not even human. So what I found was it spread all across the country. People got behind it. Other Black newspapers supported it. And it became a strong initiative that even got the attention of the President of the United States and people in his cabinet. So Black Lives Matter seemingly is the same type of initiative and movement. Do you believe that the Black press of America should create its own initiative or get behind movements like Black Lives Matter? And if so, how?
I think it's our prerogative. It's necessary for us to have an initiative. I think we must, know within our community, of the Black press, what it is that we need, to ensure that we can exist as a business. So, we have to have our demands in order, and we have to be able to add that to the agenda of the NAACP or, Black Lives Matter or whoever. There does need to be more unity and collaboration among these organizations. I think, back to your question, that, as the Black press, I know, for instance, the Bridge in Washington, D.C., I've seen instances where, I wish that we would have done a better job of reaching out to some of our local organizations and getting, their input and helping them to have a voice within our media outlets. Because sometimes, I get backlash that, we're not supporting certain folks. Sometimes we're limited in our abilities. We only have but so many pages in our paper and so many writers on our staff. But certainly we need to do a better job of making sure that, that's included in our thought process when we're doing stories and creating content going forward.
Micha.
I think that, like everybody said, that unity is key right now. While I think the Black press should definitely have its own clear initiative and agenda and set of demands, I think that the larger sort of campaign rally, like a Double V, needs to be as clear as it is for us, and we're pushing it just as hard as Black Lives Matter will push it, just as hard as the NAACP will push it, United Reform, and all of these other organizations. And the reason why I say that is because, again, right now, being on the front lines, covering the front lines, a lot of the critiques that I hear is, well, there's so many different organizations and you guys want so many different things. And that's because it's been 400 years of systemic racism. Like, that's my quick retort, right? But at the end of the day, who knew that George Floyd would be recorded on camera and this major revolution would start, right? But it would be great to have a campaign that everybody can be on one accord with. Everyone can have that slogan. Everyone can have that picture like the Double V, right? that will not make it look like we're so divided, because right now that's the big critique. You know, and that's been the critique of movements since I've been alive. You know, what the original, I won't say original because there have been so many, right? But the sort of 2000 or middle to late 2010s version of the Occupy movement. That was the original critique then, right? That, oh, well, they want so many different things, right? Like they're out there. Some of them are talking about Black lives. Some of them are just talking about like equity in general. Some are fighting for women's rights. And that is how that major Occupy movement dissolved. And so I don't want to see that happen for this revolution, because of the fact that we need to be talking about these demands, and all of these demands are incredibly important. But we have to be on one accord. And so while I think that, you know, if the Black press is pushing voting in 2020, and if that's the big thing we're doing, then that's great, right? Or if we're pushing that Black Lives Matter, that's great. And we should be doing that, and we should be making it very clear that that is something, that an initiative that we're going hard on. However, it would be great to see something as big as Double V that everybody can get on board with. You know, and I acknowledge that that's a difficult thing to do, because how do you get everyone to agree? But that would be, I think, the next step in really making changes in this revolution.
Right. And there are some things I might add that all of us, regardless of you know, our newspapers and regardless of our positions in life, can agree on: health equity and health disparity issues to address, impact African Americans, whether you're in California, whether you're in Florida, whether you're in DC, whether you're here in Texas, or wherever you are. So I think there are some things where there can be some unity and synergy, but you know, I think it's important for the NNPA to figure that out. One other question that I have for you all, given that, you know, you guys are such powerful voices in Black press today, let's just assume that now you're the lone voices. You're the lone voices that everybody in the NNPA listens to. Dr. Chavis, the chair, Karen Carter Richards, and everybody that is with NNPA that are member publishers. You know, they're listening to you. Outside of getting more involved digitally, how else can the NNPA and these member publishers incorporate young people, young millennials, into the Black press today? Start with you, Lafayette.
I think that's a very great question. I think there are many answers to that. You know, I think I took a course called user experience design, and in that course, instead of coming out with a solution up front, I'd rather, you know, a better approach I've learned is to do research to figure out a solution. So it would be great if the Black press, you know, the NNPA was to, you know, champion some type of, you know, survey or some type of research amongst Black millennials of color, you know, to figure out what the needs are within the press of millennials and how they can interact with millennials. You know, I mean, asking the three of us is a great, you know, start, but really there should just be a great outreach campaign to millennials, to draw millennials in. Like I said, there are many YouTubers and bloggers and, you know, aspiring, you know, photographers, videographers, not even aspiring, like astounding and, you know, accomplishing artists out here that would love to get involved in the Black press and, you know, are yearning for a place of acceptance for their work and their expertise. So I think just, you know, if the NNPA was to do a major outreach campaign toward millennials, it would be, you know, super helpful. And having that group of millennials at their fingertips would allow, you know, us to be a little bit, you know, more nimble and connected to the community that, you know, seems to be so disconnected right now.
Interesting. Okay, Micha.
I totally agree with Lafayette. I think that getting more millennials just in the room is the first step, because right now, not having the millennials in the room, there are so many issues and challenges can come from that. But also, I think the benefit of having them is that you hire a graphic designer to do one thing, and then they are able to see, well, this is how you can also elevate your website, your social media, your all of your digital news. Why don't we create a little intro for you here, and things like that. And so I think it's bringing these different generations in the room, and even right, millennials we're at the point of sort of getting in the older side. The older millennials are close to 40 right now, right? And so
be careful when you start talking about older side now.
I said older side, right? Older side. But,
hey, got a little gray here. I understand.
I'm loving it. I love it. Let's not talk about it. Look, I have not been able to dye my edges during this time. Okay, there's some grays up in here as well. but I mean, realistically, those graduating right now, right, are not millennials. Those kids that are graduating right now are also the ones that we need in these rooms, and they can be super helpful. But I also think it's a matter of us taking a step back and looking at our competition. So while the Black press is the Black press is the Black press, and we should totally honor that, and that we are not mainstream media, we have to know that our website needs to look as good as the ABCs and the CNNs and the Foxes, because that's where people will go to just off of aesthetic, right? Millennials are totally based off of do I like the look of what I'm reading? Do I like the look of the interview that I'm watching? So, I think it also is a moment of us saying, keeping up with the competition, knowing how trends are constantly changing, right? When I first came on to the Afro, my background was broadcast journalism, and I was doing a lot of packages for the Afro. And then, I went to a training in January and February through Facebook, and I'm looking at the kind of work that's being done at these larger mainstream organizations that I learned how to do packages from 5 years ago. And that's not at all the kind of news that they're doing anymore on the digital front. And there's text on their screens, and everything is able to be digested mobily and silently, right? Because right now nobody's working in the office, but before, you might want to see that great news video, but have to watch it on silent. And so thus you have to have wonderful graphics and text on screen and charts and things like that. And so we just got to keep up with the trends and then see how it works for us. And so that would be my only addition, as to, let's get some more millennials in the place. Let's get some Generation Xers in the house. We need them, and what they have to offer is so useful. And
right.
sorry, last thing, just because this is something that I think has been so key for me and in my development, and something that Lafayette mentioned earlier, is the need for mentorship. That mentorship is something that we cannot forget about, because I've heard these amazing stories talking to Dr. Chavis, or talking to our publisher, Reverend Dr. Francis Tony Draper, or talking to other publishers who have said great stories about those publishers that came before them, or have told us great stories about conventions that really changed their purview, and how they were able to go about their not only covering news and delivering news, but just their lives in general. And I think that we need more of that. I want not only the stories, but I want to be able to tell my own later. And I think the mentorship would be wonderful.
Okay, Franklin.
The first two answers were really great. I just want to add a few points. It all comes with involvement. You have to involve the millennials. I hate to say this, but there should be more millennials on this call having this discussion with us, because I don't think all three of us should be speaking, for a whole generation of people. But as far as the NNPA, how millennials and the Black press say how millennials can get more involved is just giving them a platform, having them in the room, having them on conference calls, hire them on your team. How many of our publications have, 2 to 3 millennials on the team? Like, who are we paying? I have no problem saying this, you shouldn't be, there's going to be a disconnect if you have somebody 40 plus doing your social media. I don't think that they're going to be doing the best job if they're 40 plus. That should be somebody 18 or 30 running that. And that's just my personal opinion, but just involvement and trends happen every day. There's trends that happen now that the older generation doesn't really get until like 3 months from now. And that 3 months time span is critical. Those are all impressions and stuff that you're losing, analytical information that's very key to your business. The first 2 points that Micha and Jeff made were good. We're good.
All right. Hey,
Just wanted to say that.
I know we're up on time, and I wanted to make sure, first of all, this has been a great, healthy, robust discussion, and I thank you again for participating. My final question, and then I'll bring it back to you all for closing comments, and then I'll share some to close us out as well. Your legacy, our legacy, is important, or should be important. How we're remembered. We think about, the individuals who started the first Black newspaper, Freedom's Journal, and then we fast forward to today, 2020. In your estimation, at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, how do you all individually, personally and professionally, want to be remembered as your legacy in the Black press? We'll start with you, Franklin.
I just started my work this year in the Black press in January with my publication, but I certainly do want to be remembered. I have some big shoes to fill. It's something that I deal with every day. And, I work on different things. I'm working on music. I'm working on films. I'm working with the Black press, working with my father. I'm just trying to stay busy, and I do want to be remembered. But as far as the Black press, I want to be remembered as someone who tried to help bridge the gap between the generations and someone that added to the sustainability of the Black press.
All right, Lafayette.
Yeah, I'm right there with Franklin. I mean, it's huge shoes to fill. All of our, previous publishers are not just business owners and publishers, but also civil rights leaders and community organizers and the aunts and uncles of every young person in the community. So it's certainly a lot of shoes to fill. But if I could just focus on one thing, I guess I would say I would hope that I could help with I'm not sure what my answer would be, but it's basically like, I think that we have a lot of other aspects of our businesses, i.e. like our archives and our photographers and, our sort of media, our media industry skills that are like bigger than just being the press. And so I would like to see, some of our businesses expand outside of, our traditional role in the press. Let's get into film, let's get into curriculum, like let's really make media content that can be shared globally on all the scales. We already have, we are all media hubs and houses. We are all production facilities. And so there are many other skills that many other things we can produce outside of just our traditional, newspapers. So I would hope, I want to see that from the Informer and from the Bridge, and I hope to lead a charge for that for other publications within the Black press.
Thank you, Micha.
So as everybody said, this is such a heavy question because I feel like I'm just at the very beginning of my contribution to the Black press. And, there's such huge shoes to fill. And I don't know if my intention is to fill those shoes or create another tiny little footprint. And I think it's the latter. You know, I truly, again, honor those who came before us and really appreciate all that they've contributed, not only to the Black press, but the Black community and the United States and global community in general. I mean, we would not know so many stories of our people had it not been for those who told it hundreds of years ago, over 100 years ago. That said, I would love, as a broadcast baby, as they say, to see the larger expansion of not only digital, but use of video news. And I think that that can be from television shows and video podcasts, all the way, you know, to just those small 3-minute videos that are packages that can be shared, or a 1.5-minute videos that can just be shared. And I'd like to see that on just a larger scale. You know, I see the Now This videos, and I see these larger mainstream companies and even the BuzzFeeds, right, who they have very specific styles, like, you know, different than the Black press, but specific to what they're doing. And it works, and it's shared, you know, thousands of times a minute, right? And so because we have just as important, if not more important information, as a broadcast girl, I would like to see more of that. And I hope that the work that I'm doing at the Afro is sort of leading that charge, and thus would like my legacies to sort of be wrapped in that, looking back later. But again, I hope that 50 years, when I'm at the NNPA convention going on 79, that I can say, oh yeah, you know, well, that was me doing them videos, but I really, really still honor the Carl Murphys of the world. And I really, you know, and you know, I want to be able to say that not only did I do something new, but it was with the same inspiration and passion that our publishers over 100 years ago had.
Thank you. Micha Green with the Washington Afro, Lafayette Barnes with the Washington Informer, and Franklin Chavis with Black Millennial Voices. Thank you so much. I want to allow you all to just give in 1 minute or less some closing comments, and then we'll conclude this this webinar that has been so informative, and I've enjoyed myself thoroughly. We'll start with you, Lafayette, and then we'll go and let the young lady that ain't 79 yet close us out. Lafayette.
First, just wanted to say thank you. Thank you, Jeff and Dr. Chavis and NNPA, and, you know, glad to be joined by Micha and Franklin, you know, great company to be in. And I hope that we can connect more, you know, within our organizations. And if, you know, I would hope that anyone who's watching this can, you know, learn more about my organization, the Washington Informer and the Washington Informer Bridge at WashingtonInformer.com. And you can check out the bridge at wibridgedc.com. Also on social media, YouTube, and wherever else. If you're in DC and you're a millennial and you're looking to get involved in the Black press, feel free to reach out to us. We're always looking for younger folks to get involved. We have a lot of content that we need to cover, and, you know, we want your help, and, you know, don't be shy. So
are you on Twitter and Instagram? Can you provide your handle?
Yes, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all under the handle WIBridgeDC. And also we have these nice hats and t-shirts and stuff. So, you know, you guys can get fly, you know, with your Black owned, Black press gear.
There
also
you go.
on our website. So check that out.
That's awesome. Thank you. Franklin.
This is Franklin Chavis for Black Millennial Voices. You can follow Black Millennial Voices on Instagram at Black Millennial Voices, BMV Voices on Twitter, and there's a www.blackmillennialvoices.com. It's updated weekly with positive Black stories, and we are currently working on the show part of the concept where I'm working on a show and a pilot where I'm going to be, it's a docuseries documenting positive Black stories throughout the country. And we are looking to grow our team with more millennials. If you're in the DC area or, just in the United States, feel free to send me a message. And I look forward to working with anybody who wants to be involved.
Micha.
So again, I just want to thank NNPA for even having us on and being able to think about this, where the Black press as millennials and where we are and where we can go. This has been not only rewarding for me, but a really great opportunity to reflect and say, and a call to action to say, where can we go now? And I thank Lafayette and Franklin and Jeffrey, as well as Dr. Chavis. And thank you, Kimmy, for being behind the scenes and making sure that everything is going up to plan. That said, as everyone else said, support the Afro in many ways. You can obviously follow us on our social media platforms at Afro News on Twitter and Instagram. We just got a TikTok as well. And we are on Facebook at Afro American Newspapers. You can also go to www.afro.com where you can become a subscriber instantly to our website and or get the hard copy paper, and I suggest both because that's great. I also encourage any young people, millennials and younger, to get involved. I had my goddaughter, who's 11, do some fun videos for us. And let's just say she helped us raise a little money during this pandemic, as well as get some information to those who are following the Black press. And it was so refreshing to see such a young person care about what we're doing. And she's 11, but what she was telling me is that even younger people can be sources, what I called her our youth contributor, right? And they can be on the streets as well and talking to their peers and expressing their concerns and challenges. So I really encourage young people of all ages to reach out to us, and we have a space for you at the Afro for sure. And again, thank you for allowing us to do this today.
Oh, no problem. All right. I also want to thank Dr. Benjamin Chavis, NNPA president, of course, as the chair, Karen Carter Richards. Of course, you can follow me. I am the associate editor at the historic Houston Forward Times newspaper, celebrating 60 years this year. Never missed a week of print in the history of our newspaper. And so excited about our ability to connect and be able to inform, educate, and empower our readers and the community as a whole. You can follow us, of course, at Forward Times on Instagram, on Twitter, and of course, we are at Forward Times on Facebook. You can follow me, Jeffrey L. Boney, at Real Talk Junkies. And of course, I want to encourage you to go to our website, www.forwardtimes.com, in order to review our content. And of course, don't forget about Black Press USA and the National Newspaper Publishers Association. Black press is so important. If ever there was a time for American citizens to show more care and concern for Black folks, particularly those being targeted because of their race and even being murdered, like George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and others, then the care and that concern that they give to animals, that they give to especially dogs and cats, the right to bear arms and have their Second Amendment rights enforced, the economy by opening up or reopening these states early when the COVID-19 virus has shown that it's negatively impacted people, particularly people of color, having the freedom to roam the streets in the midst of that pandemic, or anything else that is cherished more than the lives of Black people. I believe that that time is now, and the Black press must continue to be a voice of those voiceless people, a voice for those that need advocacy. It's time for everybody to take a stand against the systemic the systems and prejudices that hamper Black folks from progressing in this country. And that has to be something that the Black press leads. And I am encouraging the NNPA, as you've heard from many of these millennials on the call today, that we need to get more engaged, more involved. We need to incorporate our younger people, Black Lives Matter and others into this conversation so we can make a sustainable difference. Simply put, enough is enough, and we need to lead the charge and lead the way. Thank you.